So leading up to the passage of the NDAA, there's been quite a bit of discussion and debate, especially here at RT, about two sections of it, Section 1021 and 1022, and how far the government can go in terms of detaining people indefinitely. As of now, anyone who the president determines, quote, substantially supported the Taliban, al-Qaeda, or, quote, associated forces could be designated as enemy combatants subject to indefinite detention, and that includes U.S. citizens. Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat from California, tried to fix that, getting what's now known as the Feinstein Amendment inserted into the bill. It stated an authorization to use military force, a declaration of war, or any similar authority shall not authorize the detention without charge or trial of a citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States apprehended in the United States unless an act of Congress expressly authorizes such detention. For those who have been fighting to get U.S. citizens removed from this indefinite detention clause, this seemed like a victory. But now several people are coming forward and saying this doesn't just not make things better, it actually makes things worse. Let's go now to Tangerine Boland. She's the founder and director of Revolution Truth. Tangerine, let's talk bigger picture here of this. The bill passed in the Senate 98-0, despite some major concerns, constitutional concerns. Your reaction?
Well, I find that really disturbing. It's unfortunate that Congress is prone to passing so many unconstitutional provisions. So very strange, unfortunate. Fortunately, we have a judiciary to fight that.
Of course, Section 1021 and 1022, the two most controversial sections, but they're encompassed in a much larger piece of legislation. Anything you think, Tangerine, that will change for better because of NDAA?
Oh, good question. You know, it depends on how things go going forward. The Feinstein Amendment, unfortunately, that there's a lot of controversy about, doesn't actually help anything. It's meaningless at best and dangerous at worst. And the Smith-Amash Amendment, which is the gold standard for amending the NDAA, doesn't really look like it's going to get a lot of support on the floor. So it's hard to say that anything is going to change for the better at this point on this front.
And it is, of course, 600 and something pages. You mentioned that what a lot of critics have been saying over the last couple of days, which is that it's going to make things worse. And one of the things people are concerned about is that it sort of puts in writing the ability of the military to police the streets here, not for U.S. citizens or people with green cards, but for people, that I work with every day, people from other countries who have, the right to be here. They're here legally working, but if the government wants to detain them indefinitely, they can do so. Talk a little bit about this and some of, the challenges you foresee if this is indeed what the law becomes.
Well, actually, first I'd like to clarify something because my legal counsel would not concur with how you just characterized that. They would partially concur, and what they would say is essentially that, yes, there's the discriminatory aspect of this that the ACLU has just put forth, which is, of course, the Constitution protects all people in this nation, not just legal residents and citizens. So we have to address that issue. But there are three other really prominent problems with the Feinstein Amendment. It's even worse than what you just described. And that is that first, it extends the authority of the AUMF to U.S. soil. So contrary to what you said about this possibly not, providing protection for American citizens, that's actually not our read on it at all. And it's not the read of a bunch of other prominent civil liberties groups. So that's up for dispute. Further, it calls for a trial, but it doesn't stipulate what kind of trial. That means we still could see people in military indefinite detention with no access to civil courts. It focuses on habeas relief, once again, rather than the entire, due process, and that's problematic. And lastly, the language includes, unless an act of Congress authorizes indefinite military detention, which sort of sounds like Congress thinks that it can actually pass unconstitutional laws, which is, I know they may try, but that's not constitutional.
Let me kind of break down what you just said. First of all, the AUMF, the authorization for the use of military force. From what I understand, Tangerine, I mean, that it passed after 9/11. That's still in place, right?
Of course it is, yes. And there is some question as to whether that can be applied to U.S. citizens. There was the only case we've come even close in that regard is Padilla, who was detained just outside of the U.S. So I don't think we have any case law that has really tried that concept on whether the AUMF specifically does apply to U.S. citizens. That's up for debate as well.
And I thought it was really interesting what you said, too, about, the latter part of the Feinstein Amendment, which says unless Congress, passes the authorization to do so. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, about Congress thinking that they can pass unconstitutional laws. I mean, what's the bigger implication here?
Gosh, there are several implications, and they're all really concerning. Congress really seems quite confused as far as it's not really standing on the side of upholding the rule of law. And we really see that in the case of Guantanamo. You mentioned that in the lead up to this interview, which is that Congress is now trying to make sure that there are no more transfers out of Guantanamo if they're to U.S. soil. I mean, they've really hogtied President Obama so that he can't actually shut that prison down. But furthermore, and back to our case, something that's really critical here is the Feinstein Amendment extends the conflation of the AUMF and the NDAA powers of indefinite detention. And this is a really critical point, Christine, because the DOJ, from the get-go in our case, has gone out of its way to conflate those two laws and the powers of indefinite detention therein. They are not the same. We have proven that in court. We won our case showing that the NDAA actually radically expands powers. And yet the Feinstein Amendment, the way it's worded, it continues that conflation. And I think that this is really, whether it's deliberate or not, it's unfortunately incredibly misleading. It's letting the public think that these two powers are the same when, no, we suddenly have a radical expansion of powers. And Congress is not helping anything.
I want to talk about, first of all, the fact that the NDAA was passed unanimously. Of course, when we talk about a couple of these controversial sections tucked into this larger defense spending bill, I mean, the long and the short of it is a lot of senators, all of them who voted for it, would say, this keeps our troops funded, it keeps them safe, sort of ignoring what you and what we at RT have been focusing on. I've got to say, though, a whole lot of people who watch the mainstream media, people who are tuned in, don't even really know much about the NDAA at all. Why do you think it was that we didn't even see, 5 senators not vote for this because of some of these controversial sections? And why are the majority of American people not aware of, Section 1021 and 1022?
Oh, I have a two-part answer to that. And I think that first and foremost, there's too much playing politics on the Hill. There's so much partisanship here, and really, politics are taking precedent over doing the right thing again and again, which is just reprehensible. And secondly, unfortunately, there's a major breakdown in our mainstream media, and we could even see that in our case, where there is at least one major media organization, sort of the gold standard of media in this country. They know full well the radical discrepancy in words and stance in court with the DOJ on the AUMF and NDAA. They know that none of this makes sense, and yet they refuse to report the story. So I just think there's a systemic breakdown in the delivery of news in this country, except for organizations like yours. So, well,
especially because this is something that, unlike, for example, the Casey Anthony case, in which media outlets spent exorbitant, hours and hours on. I mean, this is something that actually applies to and could impact the majority of American people. We are out of time. Tangerine Bolin, founder and director of Revolution Truth. Thanks so much.